Wonder Self-Portraits with Ms. Boley and inspired by graphic designer Tad Carpenter. Who is Tad Carpenter? He's a graphic designer and illustrator. He's the person who designed the cover for Wonder by R.J. Palacio. It's the cover that you're seeing here in this picture. When creating the cover, Tad had to make some artistic decisions. He said, "From the get-go, we knew we wanted to have Augie on the cover of the jacket in some way, but the challenge was how much of Augie do we show? We believe that the book itself should be what paints the picture of this captivating character, and so we approached the Wonder Jacket in more abstract terms." What Tad said about his artistic decisions on his Wonder cover reminded me of this idea of our identities as an iceberg, where what we look like is only a tiny chunk of who we are, and all those other things that you see under the iceberg are really what makes us who we are. So our art is going to be super abstract. We're only going to be showing our hair and one eye. And then the remainder of the art, we're going to have text explaining about those under the water iceberg type things about ourselves. So why are we doing this? We're trying to make art inspired by outside sources, which is the book Wonder. We're also making art about things that are important to me, so about my identity. And I'm also using emphasis in my artwork to lead the viewer's eye around the page. This is what we're going to need. You can pause here and go gather your materials, and if you don't have a watercolor set, you can just use any other type of colors. Let's get started. I want to take up the majority of my visual journal page, so I'm going to attempt to draw a large-ish oval shape, sort of in the center of my paper. Now, I've realized that my oval is slightly too high. It's not really in the center, so I'm just going to redraw it here. And so I wanted to show this redrawing part just so that you know this is the time where you can take your time and get things really correct and how you want them. All right, now we're gonna draw the hair. So I have collected a whole bunch of reference images for different hairstyles. And remember, we're only drawing just the hair. We're not drawing the actual face. However, I am going to draw in some guidelines here. So approximately a line directly halfway vertically and side to side horizontally. And that's going to show me where I can place in my ears and where I can place in my eye. So I'm going to just go with a simple sort of diamond shape eye for this one. And again, I also have some reference images with different eye shapes that you can choose from. So once I get the ears and the eye drawn in, then I'm gonna start to sketch the hair. So the hair is gonna start about 1 inch down from the top of the oval that you drew. And I'm just looking at some of those reference images. And remember, your portrait doesn't have to actually look like you. The more important part of the portrait is those under iceberg characteristics that we showed earlier. So if you want to pick a hairstyle that's not just like what your hair looks like, but it's something that really kind of resonates with you or you really like it, then you can go ahead and draw that. So I'm just doing the outline. And then I'm eventually going to go in and erase the line of the oval that's going to kind of be underneath the hair. And I've also erased those guidelines as well, the straight vertical line and the horizontal line. And I'm leaving a space in the middle for the neck and kind of just ending off the hair there where it would end off. Okay, so I'm happy with this, and now I'm going to start in with my watercolor paints. And I'm going to do the watercolors first, just in case we have anyone that doesn't have a permanent marker. Oh, and I'm actually just going to draw in the chin. I had erased it earlier, but I'm just going to draw it back in. And then I'm going to grab my brush and I'm going to get it wet with water. I'm just going to paint some water all over the face and neck area. And then I need to make some choices about my colors. So I've chosen blue. Just want to suggest that you maybe think about using a cool color for the background and a warm color for the face, or switch that around and do the opposite, just so that we have some contrast with warm and cool colors in your piece. But as always, you can make the decisions. Just make sure that you are actually thinking about these choices before you make them. So I'm just going to be using a little bit of the wet on wet technique in the face area, and I'm going to be picking some blue and green and doing some wet on wet technique within the face. Now I'm going to repeat the same technique in the background. I'm going to be using warm colors like orange and red and purple. So once you have your whole background painted, it is essential that you just give it a second and you let it fully dry. Okay, I'm back. It's fully dry. I'm going to put away my watercolor paints. I'm going to switch to permanent marker or whatever marker you have available. So I'm going to be using a fine tip for outlining the eye, and I'll be using the extra fine tip to do the writing, and then I'll be using the really extra large one to color in the hair. I'm also going to use a colored Sharpie to color in the iris of the eye, but remember, these portraits are all about being really minimalist, and they're not really realistic either. So we want to take that into account when we're making choices as well. So I have now decided to do a little bit of a highlight on the hair. And so what I wanted to do is just use my pencil to draw out where that highlight would go. And so I'm going to do one on the left side and then just like a smaller one on the right side. So again, you can make the decision to do that if you like, or just not do that. It's up to you. So I'm going to outline it with the fine tip Sharpie, and then I'm going to use the larger marker to color in all of the hair black. Even though I don't have black hair, it's just the aesthetic of the portraits. So there we go. Remember, use the proper tool for the proper task, right? So I don't want to use a tiny thin marker to color in a huge area. We want to take that into account. Okay, so I'm now going to draw in some glasses. So I realized that it might be helpful to draw to show sort of how I would do glasses. And so what I'm doing is I'm just using a pencil to draw the outline of the glasses, and I'm just doing my best to check the symmetry, because glasses are symmetrical, they're the same on both sides. And then once I have the pencil outline, I will line it with marker and also fill it in with marker. And something else you can think about is how you can maybe use white materials like white pencil crayon or white pastel to just do super subtle and simple highlights. So for glasses, because they're made of shiny plastic, I thought it would be cool to do just a little white highlight with a white pencil crayon. Remember, we want to keep these abstract, but some of those little touches can be very impactful. For the words, so I know some of us are practicing our cursive writing, so you could choose to do some of those words in cursive writing or not. And just in order to be a little bit more comfortable with this, I'm using a pencil to write it out first to make sure I've spelled it properly and to make sure that I like the way it looks. And then I'm just going to go in with the Sharpie and go over it. So I'm using the extra fine tip Sharpie so that the words are really easy to read. Just use whatever you have available. So you're going to do one word over top of the I, and then a whole bunch of words all around the outside. All right, so I wrote creative, and now I'm going to do the radial design. So I'm going to have the words going around and around, all around the head. I'm not going to put them where the neck would be. I'm just going to go around, sort of to give that, like to help the eye travel around. Okay, so I'm thinking of what are some of those things that people wouldn't be able to tell about me just from looking at me. So those things under the iceberg, right? What are my interests? Who am I, basically? So what is important to me, and those kinds of things. So you can decide if you want to brainstorm those out on a sheet of paper beforehand, or if you want to just go for it and just write it out, just like what I did. Also, I came up with some words and some things, and then I repeated them because I just didn't have enough to fill up a full background. Okay, so once I had, maybe 15 or 20 things, maybe even more like 10 things, then I just repeated those over and over within the background. And that is the process we'll follow for our wonder portraits. I cannot wait to see yours, and thank you so much for watching.